Marcus Bell came home earlier than anyone expected. He wasn't supposed to be there, not tonight, but fate has a way of leading us back when something's not right. And what he found inside his family mansion was enough to freeze every bone in his body. His mother, Evelyn, sat trembling on the velvet couch. Her scarf had slipped just enough to reveal bruises painted along her neck, and the words leaving her mouth over and over again, broken, fragile, were, "Am I a witch? A bad mother?" At first, Marcus couldn't move, couldn't even breathe. But when he checked the mansion's cameras, what he uncovered shattered him more than the bruises ever could. The person behind his mother's suffering wasn't a stranger, it was Clara, his wife. The betrayal cracked open something far darker, a trail of secrets stretching back years, disappearances, crimes that investigators had never been able to solve. Until now. But before we go any further, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Because what you're about to hear is not just a family tragedy, it's a story that twists into something you'll never forget. The jet had touched down in a drizzle, the kind that clings to suits and lingers like an omen. Marcus loosened his tie as he stepped out of the car, letting the night air rinse away the stale taste of endless meetings. But when he reached the mansion, something was off. The lights were glowing, yet the house felt suspended. No music from the kitchen, no clatter of dishes, only the hum of the air conditioner and the ticking of the old grandfather clock. He set his phone down on the console table, fixed a cufflink that didn't need fixing, and listened. That's when he heard it. Faint, uneven, broken breaths, slipping out from somewhere past the foyer. The living room sat like a gallery, every frame polished, lilies fresh in a vase. But in the middle of all that perfection was Evelyn, his mother. Perched on the edge of the couch, her hands twisted tight, shoulders folding inward, her scarf tilted sideways, revealing what she tried to hide. The bruise wasn't loud, but it didn't whisper either. A deep purple fading into sickly green, like a storm that had passed but left its scars across the sky. Marcus felt his chest blaze hot, then empty. One step, another. He didn't touch her. Not yet. First he read the room, the way he always did. Where's the pressure? Where's the exit? Where's the truth hiding? Behind the pantry door, two staff whispered. Thought Madam was better. Another voice hushed them. You know who's been keeping her company when he's away. Their words hung in the air, tangled in the heavy sweetness of lilies and the sharp sting of ointment. Evelyn blinked up at him, slow, like she had to force his face into focus. 1, 2, 3 blinks. Her lips quivered, then steadied, and the plea that left her mouth was one she must have rehearsed in her nightmares. Am I a witch? Am I a bad mother? The clock ticked. A pipe clicked upstairs. Marcus crouched, his fingers hovering before he let them rest gently on her wrist. Soft, cautious, as if touching glass that could shatter. Her pulse was racing. He clenched. His jaw swallowed back every furious word and said only what mattered most. Breathe. He sat beside her, not too close, adjusting the messy knot of her scarf with quiet precision, hiding the bruise, hiding the storm. His eyes flicked upward, straight to the ceiling corner where a tiny red light blinked. The cameras, always watching. In the hallway, a floorboard groaned as the staff retreated. Silence swallowed the house again, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for someone to speak the truth. Marcus inhaled, slow, steady. The room tasted of lilies and fear. He didn't argue, didn't rush. He studied her, the bruise's shape, the way her chin tilted timidly, the way her eyes darted to the doorway as if expecting something to come through and devour her. There was a pattern in those glances, and Marcus Bell knew patterns. They never lied, patterns never lie. Their stories dressed as clues, and Marcus Bell knew how to read them. He stood slowly, brushing his sleeve as if dusting off thoughts too heavy to carry. His voice came low. Not a question, not yet an accusation. Just wait, the kind that makes a room hold its breath. His eyes flicked once at the blinking red light above, then down the hall toward his private office. That was where the cameras lived, where the mansion's memory lived, where the truth hid. Waiting. He kissed his mother's hair, lingered for a beat, then straightened and walked with measured steps toward the footage. No fireworks, no rage, just direction. The office smelled faintly of cedar and ink. Marcus closed the heavy door with a soft click, never a slam. Control first, rage later. He sank into the leather chair, tapped the keyboard and the wall of monitors. Blinked awake. Quiet eyes in every corner of the house lit up, feeding their secrets into his hands. He exhaled through his teeth, steadying fingers that already twitched with fury. And there she was, Clara, his wife, perfectly put together, hair pinned, silk blouse tucked neat, moving with the careless ease of someone who thought no one dared. "Stop her!" Marcus leaned forward. Evelyn appeared next, balancing a tray of tea, her smile soft, her posture fragile, always trying to keep peace. Clara's face twisted, words spilled across her lips, too sharp for the microphones to catch, insults scrolling silently. Then it happened, a sudden slap. Evelyn stumbled, clutching her scarf. Marcus's knuckles pressed so hard into the desk, the wood groaned. His chest burned, but this fire had nothing to do with power or pride. This was blood. This was his mother. Through the vent above the door, faint whispers drifted. The staff hushed, thinking themselves hidden. "She shouldn't have to go through this," another voice replied. "But the missus, she's dangerous. People disappear around her. Don't get involved." That word, disappear, echoed like a gunshot. It wasn't gossip, it was fear. Marcus rewound the footage, watched again, slower, every micro-expression on Clara's face, the cold sneer, the flick of her wrist, the calculated step forward. It wasn't random, it was a pattern, a routine. When he finally rose from the chair, his movements were deliberate, measured. He adjusted his cufflink again, not vanity, not habit, but a ritual to keep his fists unclenched. Each step across the marble floor sounded louder than the last, like a clock counting down. Clara was at the dining table, scrolling on her phone, wine glass tilted casually. She didn't even flinch when he walked in. Instead, she smiled, a sharp, knowing curve of her lips. "You're home early," she said, voice clipped, careless. "I hope the trip wasn't a waste." Marcus didn't answer. Not right away. He studied her. How the chandelier caught the edge of her jaw, how her nails tapped against the glass stem, how her arrogance dressed itself as confidence. And for a moment, he remembered their first dinner, the charm she wore like silk, the laughter that seemed so effortless. Now, all he saw were rehearsed edges, too polished to be real. Finally, his voice came, quiet but sharp as glass. "Why, is my mother crying?" Clara tilted her head, almost amused. "Because she's dramatic. She plays the victim. You know how old women get." Marcus's stomach knotted. No denial, no hesitation, just contempt. Then she smirked wider. "She deserves discipline. Someone had to remind her she's not the queen here." The words clanged in his head, cold, metallic. He didn't shout. He didn't lunge. He only nodded once as though filing away a transaction, and then he turned, walking out, not retreat but calculation. The hallway mirror caught his reflection, unreadable, dangerous. Clara's smirk lingered, but just for a moment. Then it wavered, as if some small instinct whispered that the ground beneath her was beginning to crack. By the time Marcus reached the stairwell, his decision was already made. Act 2 was finished. He had evidence. He had whispers. He had her, pride on full display. What came next wasn't anger, it was an investigation, and this time Marcus wouldn't be watching from a monitor. That night, he didn't sleep. Marcus sat in his office, the monitors casting a cold glow across his face. The same clip played again and again. Clara's hand striking, Evelyn flinching. The silence between replays grew heavier than any sound. His finger tapped the desk in a steady rhythm, patience fighting to contain the storm rising inside him. At dawn, he made the call. Not to friends, not to lawyers, straight to the detectives who once whispered at a gala that Clara's past wasn't as spotless as her smile. Marcus didn't waste words, just 3 that landed like a hammer. "I have footage." Within hours, 2 plainclothes officers arrived. Their shoes squeaked against the marble floors, alien to the grandeur of the mansion. They spoke in low tones, respectful, but edged with the sharpness of men who had long suspected what they were about to see. Marcus stood with his hands behind his back as he pressed play. His jaw was tight, his breathing controlled. One officer's brow furrowed, the other exhaled, a sound almost like relief. "We've been watching her for years," one murmured. "Different names, different cities, 3 marriages. Always the same pattern." The words split Marcus open. He leaned against his desk, letting them sink in like shards of glass. The officer went on. "Each time she isolates the mother or father. Sometimes it's bruises, sometimes—" He paused. "Sometimes they disappear. Disappear." The same word the staff had whispered through vents now carried the weight of coffins. Marcus closed his eyes. Memories of Clara flashed. Her laugh too polished, the way she dodged questions about her past, the way she always shifted topics before anyone could pry too deep. The threads connected now, weaving a pattern he wished he had seen earlier. When the detectives stepped out to make calls, Marcus walked the halls of his own house, voices carried through the marble again. "He'll leave her, right? He's too smart not to." Another voice whispered back, "Rich men get blinded." Then softer, "Not Marcus, he's not like the others. Their faith wasn't loud, but it was real. He carried it like armor." By evening, Clara returned from a spa day, robe cinched loose, phone pressed to her ear. She turned the corner into the hall and froze. Marcus stood waiting, silent, detectives behind him. For the first time, her smirk cracked, like glass dropped too softly to shatter. The officers stepped forward. Her eyes darted, calculating exits. But Marcus didn't move aside. He blocked the stairway, his silence heavier than any curse he could have hurled. When they read her rights, Clara laughed, a high, brittle laugh that snapped into a cough as the cuffs clicked around her wrists. The investigation spread fast. Papers unearthed her trail, 3 different last names, 3 vanished in-laws, restraining orders buried under hush-money settlements. A life built on reinvention, always moving. Before the truth could stick, Marcus sat through every briefing, every midnight call with detectives. He didn't flinch when they showed him faces of the missing. He didn't speak when they explained how new evidence finally tied the threads together. He only thought of his mother, curled under a blanket, whispering to herself that she wasn't. Cursed that she wasn't a witch. For the first time, justice was moving. Not fast, not loud, but steady like Marcus himself. And as Clara's mugshot spread across the headlines, the mansion seemed to exhale. The staff walked lighter, and the lilies in the vase smelled like flowers again, no longer a mask for antiseptic. Marcus knew this was never about headlines. It was about a mother who had finally been believed, and a son who chose action when silence would have been easier. The mansion changed in the weeks after Clara's arrest. No sharp perfume clinging to the curtains, no footsteps pacing long past midnight, no tense silence choking the air between rooms. For the first time in years, the house felt like it belonged to Evelyn again. Most mornings, Marcus found her in the garden, shawl draped over her shoulders, hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She looked smaller now, but lighter too, like a heavy lock had finally been turned, freeing her chest to breathe. Yet sometimes he'd still hear her whisper the old doubt, the words that scarred deeper than bruises. Am I a witch? Am I a bad mother? Every time Marcus knelt beside her chair, his voice steady, his eyes unflinching. No, Mama, you are my foundation. You built me into who I am. That's not weakness, that's power. In town, the whispers had shifted. At barbershops, at cafes, people leaned in with lowered voices. Did you hear? That billionaire's wife, living double lives. And the mother? She knew something was off all along. Folks should have listened. Say what you want about Marcus, but he stood by her. He protected his own. That's respect. Marcus overheard some of it while moving through public spaces, but he never corrected them. He let the chatter wash over him like background noise. What mattered wasn't gossip. It was his mother's recovery, making sure she never doubted herself again. Meanwhile, the investigation pressed forward. Detectives traced Clara's web. 3 aliases, 3 marriages, 3 trails of abuse, and 2 missing in-laws whose names now carried the weight of cold cases reopened. Headlines branded her the chameleon widow. Courts called her dangerous. Justice wasn't fast, but it was relentless. Each hearing unearthed more evidence, more voices from the past. And through it all, Marcus was there. Not the billionaire in tailored suits, not the boardroom strategist, but simply a son, sitting behind his mother, steady, unshakable, the same way she once held his hand through every storm of childhood. By the time Clara's conviction came, Evelyn's bruises had faded. What didn't fade was Marcus's resolve. He cut back his business trips, cancelled long weeks abroad. Money can wait, he told his board. Family can't. The mansion stood taller, not because of wealth, but because truth had been aired, justice served and love restored. And as this story closes, it leaves behind more than scandal. It leaves a lesson. Sometimes the sharpest betrayals don't come from strangers, but from the ones we let closest. Marcus returned home to heartbreak, but he chose courage over silence. In doing so, he gave his mother back her peace and proved that real power isn't money, it's protection. Stories like Marcus's remind us strength isn't measured in wealth, but in standing up for those we love. If this story moved you, don't go just yet. Hit subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and stay with us, because we have more stories that will linger with you long after the screen goes dark.